Join us here today as we analyze the fallout of the newest ban in Florida, the ban on lab grown meat, a move that has come with a lot of praise and a lot of chagrin as well. So let's just jump right into this.
All right, all right, all right. Here we go.
Here we go. Look, we're going to talk about the aftermath of Florida banning lab-grown meat. Does this help beef industry and protect consumers, or does it hinder progress and consumer options?
Wow. I didn't know that it was a major issue here in Florida. And Kellen and I had a short conversation about this the other day. And I think I understand now why this is a major issue.
Really,
Yeah,
I'm kind of getting to the last
yeah,
thing because
it's it's more of an economic thing than anything. But before we dive into this, it's important to establish what was actually banned here because when I went to follow social media discourse, people were on all different pages on what the hell was even under regulation here. One, this is not processed meat. This is not because I've seen some people say like, oh, lab grown meat's not safe. Did you see they found cadmium in Lunchables? That is processed meat, bologna, hot dogs, lunch meat. It's processed, but it is usually naturally grown. Those can be carcinogenic, but those are not grown in a lab. You could process lab grown meat into that. I don't know why you would go through all that effort, but you could, and then it would probably be bad as well. But those are separate things. The most common thing I see is the phrase meat flavored grass. This is not a plant product. This is not an impossible patty. This is actual meat. It's more of a clone. It's basically like cloning meat, using like a tiny microscopic speck and just cloning it over and over again. It is made of real meat in that way. It is not
well,
a plant-based product.
it's
And
stem
and
cell. It's stem cells, so it's actually you're using stem cells from the
yes,
cow. So that's where you're going with that. So people need
yes,
to understand the stem cell is actually where they're going to grow this from, and it's not like it's a huge production. There's no industry that's actually doing this at a level that can be supermarket ready.
yes.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just
No,
kind of
no. Thank you. Thank you for elaborating. And the other thing to know is that this is not as new as a lot of people believe. This has been around for almost 11 years now. Granted, it hasn't been like properly available to consumers for all 11 years because the FDA, naturally being as they are, because they take a long time to approve things, took a long time to approve it, and there's only a handful of places. Like Joel said, it's not a huge industry yet. There's a small handful of places that have full approval to make it because it is kind of a weird and challenging process to make it. Um, yeah, but generally, it is made of real meat. And another thing that comes up often is kind of the same argument that is brought up with baby formula. That and I'm gonna quote an actual comment I saw on Twitter. It said, "It can't be real meat because it's made in a lab." Just because a substance can be made using multiple processes, it is still that same substance in the end. If there's leftovers from that process, then that can change it. But if there's not, it's the same thing. A lot of consumers in the US mistakenly believe that baby formula, because it's the most prevalent example, is less nutritious than breast milk. It's not really true. There are some potential differences that can come from hormones during the process of breastfeeding, but nutrition wise, they're in essence identical because chemically they are the same. Two different processes, same general product. They're not intrinsically different things in that way.
well, I find that funny that that comment that you just read because that would mean that the children that have been uh, created through in vitro,
IVF,
yeah,
in
and
vitro.
IVF, yeah.
listen, it's a petri dish. You put the egg and the sperm together, and you actually grow it in a lab, okay, and then you implant it where it can grow. This is the same. This is the same type of thing. Like, so you're basically saying that it's not a real person. It's not a real person if it comes from a lab. So it's not real beef if it comes from a lab.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to have to argue with that one because I've seen
Synthetic oil, not
I've
for my
seen
car.
I've seen over time I've seen these people that have grown up. I mean, they're in the news.
Right. So my issue is what Kellen brought to my attention is that maybe this is a political maneuver by the DeSantis administration, the Republican.
It's always got to be politics, right?
Of course, an attempt by the Republican controlled legislature in DeSantis to protect the meat industry.
Yeah, of course. I mean, listen,
Yes.
the beef industry is one of the largest. It's one of the largest lobbies, and our agriculture is huge, and the beef industry took a huge hit during COVID, and now you want to give them another hit. So why don't you set the protection? The protection's here right now in Florida as the first state to do it, but don't think that they're not other conservative states like Alabama, Tennessee.
Mhm.
I believe Wyoming is looking into similar legislation now, if I'm not
Listen,
mistaken.
Wyoming better be thinking about it because they're the beef.
Right.
Yeah,
they're, they're
they're the beef
beef.
guys.
Montana should be thinking about it also. I mean, there's more
Mhm.
cows in Montana than there are people, I would assume.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right as far as protecting the industry. But this also, people don't realize how many cows we actually have here in Florida. Yeah,
Right.
A lot.
we're a citrus state, but listen, agriculture, beef, a lot of it comes from here.
Yeah. The
So we got
Wedgeville area, right here in Central Florida, a lot of cows there.
And,
Huge numbers of cows there.
and since we
Um,
smacked them with the immigration problem, I mean,
DeSantis had to make it up to him. DeSantis had to make it up for him. It's like, well, okay, I'm sorry about the whole not being able to farm using immigrants, as many immigrants thing, but you know what? Hey, at least we'll protect you from scientists.
okay, so we got a jab in on the governor.
I
Although I question what protection this provides for beef specifically, because lab grown meat, not all lab grown meat is equally good. Because growing that meat can sometimes be challenging, especially when you have different layers of fat to tissue. Like for example, lab grown bacon comes out being pretty accurate because a belly is more or less two layers. You have like your skinny, not skin layer, but like your fatty layer, and then you have like your meaty layer, and then they're just kind of grown on top of each other, and it makes something that's pretty much dead on. The USA Today article I pulled up and sent to you guys via our show notes
Did you just
mentioned that while it's a little bit less firm sometimes, um, a lot of lab grown chicken comes out pretty correct as well, like breasts and whatnot. They come out pretty correct too. But when you get to some of those more, I'll say fancy cuts, your fillets, your picanhas, your strip loins, things like that, lab grown meat really does struggle because it's hard to replicate marbling. For those of you who don't know, you have that fat on the outside. That's the stuff that's really chewy, but then you have the marbling inside, like that looks like those weird veins that looks like weird fatty veins. That is marbling, and that is the good stuff. That's what makes meat more prime or and whatnot. So it's the good stuff. And
Yes,
right now, I don't think we have a really good process of actually replicating that because
I
that's
think
so
every,
dependent
I
on how
think
you
every,
raise the
I
animal.
think every physician in the world that watches us has just said, "Really, that's probably the worst thing." It's
I
for the
think
flavor. For flavor, no,
right.
we're saying
The
for
Yeah.
flavor.
flavor is the good stuff. It's not good. It's not better
It's not
for
good for
you.
you.
I don't know. I'm starting to eat more red meat in my diet because it's supposed to be, healthy for you in moderation, of course.
Yeah, well, it's
And
not.
it's high in protein, less carbs in my diet, but more protein.
Yeah, my cholesterol can't take it though.
Ah,
So because of my cholesterol, that's the only reason I said when you were saying that, it's like, oh yeah, I love that part, but that's
mhm,
the reason I have to stop because my cholesterol levels.
right. Mines were a little elevated, but the doctor's like, "Ah, you're healthy otherwise."
Yeah.
But go ahead, Kellen. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So will lab grown meat completely replace the
Mm,
beef industry? I don't think so. From where we stand right now, maybe it could replace, or at the very, if there's one meat that would actually like face real competition, it's chicken because of how lean it is relative to a lot of the red meats. Because that food is more, like I said, it's more lean, so you don't actually have to use as complicated a process to make good chicken meat. Um, but high quality beef right now can't be replicated. And I think it'll be a even if we figure out a way to replicate that, it'll be a long ass time before that's economically viable, I'm guessing. Granted, the economically viable thing is a guess. So there is that question as well of
mhm.
how much will actually be replaced by the new process. It's kind of unclear right now. It feels, in my opinion, I think it feels a little early for legislation like this, considering we don't really know precisely how this is going to fit in yet.
It's never too early to legislate against the evils of reproduction in a test tube. I mean, listen,
I,
this is the ultimate. Let's just make sure that we don't have anything that could turn out poorly.
Yeah,
Kellen, Joel, I have a question now. Going to what you were saying, Kellen, about the process of creating lab grown beef and not getting that full effect of what we're used to, the
yeah,
marbling, et cetera, et cetera. However, would there be a practical use for the lab grown meat and uh, not necessarily creating like that prime? Um, I want to say specimen, but
for like prime
um,
grade.
thank you, prime grade, but for like communities or areas in the world that
Yeah,
are less advantaged but need this protein in their diets, would there be a use for this at a much lesser cost to create this type of meat to meet a need and
yeah.
some of
More
our
economies of
process?
scale would need to set in the industry first. Right now, it's not usually cheaper as far as lab grown beef goes. It's not actually cheaper a lot of the time to get it lab grown right now. Um, but who knows? It may eventually. Um, I was going to say something, but I forgot what it was. Joel, did you have something to say?
No, I was just thinking about, really the best thing that could come out of this is ground beef. Because ground beef, the leaner
Oh
you can
yeah,
get it'll be, you can get a much leaner um, ground beef. But I wouldn't think that your steaks and your
Right.
fillets are going to be anything that you're really interested in. But listen, this is something let the people in other countries utilize it first, and then they can then we can see how it turns out.
Yeah,
And if
we
they
don't
start
need
growing,
people in other countries, Joel. We
if
have
they start growing,
vegans.
if they start growing two heads, I mean, we know not to take it.
right.
You ignited two quick thoughts. One of them is that there might be a unique market here in the U.S. for lab grown meat specifically. 'Cause I'm going back to USA Today article because it was actually pretty thorough. They put out a poll to their audience, and they found about a quarter of their vegan audience said that they were okay with eating lab grown meat. Look, if we can shut the vegans up. Think about it. Think about the gains. We can shut the vegans up. I'm just kidding. But
Well,
that might show a unique market for this product.
that's interesting that
And so then they could be
vegans
the ones to test it. And the two heads thing you mentioned, I should probably bring up the cancer conspiracy.
always.
There's a theory that given the process of creating the meat, because if you don't know, it, the process to create it harnesses the power of cancer in a small way in order to grow it fast. So
Hmm.
another common misconception, and I get why this one comes where this one might come from. It's like, wait a minute, we're eating cancer. I know that sounds bad, But
Right.
but remember, just it's not cancer that gives you cancer. It's carcinogens that gives you cancer, and radiation that gives you cancer. J- You know, when I was in elementary school, I lived in an area where a lot of people had leukemia, and it was drilled into us at school assemblies and whatnot that you can't catch leukemia. Cancer cells aren't actually a contagious disease.
Okay.
Um, so that assumption,
Uh,
that it must be bad doesn't I don't think is probably a reliable way to go at it, especially because it's not like they hit the stem cells with gamma rays or anything crazy like that. It's a very mild process, all things considered. Um,
I'm glad that Kellen covered that because elementary school was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, no, it was
ouch.
long, long ago. It was.
We're over here thinking elementary school.
Yeah,
I don't know if I even knew what cancer was when I was in
nope,
elementary
not at
school.
all.
Gotta
Sorry,
know
Kellen.
these things, Joel.
Couldn't help it. Couldn't help it. I was thinking, like, I'm a history buff and you have no history. But you know a lot. No, listen, that very, very intellectual and very, very informative. And I appreciate you bringing this topic up. It is interesting. I don't know if I actually have an opinion. I made some jokes and some stuff, but I don't know. I just find it interesting though that vegans have no idea that what a stem cell is, that they would want to eat lab grown beef. They must think it's totally synthetic.
I think it's more of an environmental thing for a lot of them because I knew one of them personally in high school. Well, not super well, but I knew someone in high school who largely didn't eat meat out of concern for the environment. Because if you don't know, cows are like large scale cow operations are quite bad for the environment. Cows producing a
Oh,
lot of
sure,
methane,
sure.
the water input because you gotta feed and water your cow for the entirety of its life. So the actual input of resources into meat is quite high, especially beef, because cows are big animals. Um, they produce a lot of waste, and cows are subject to a lot of drugs and antibiotics during their lifetime if they are from a CAFO or feedlot. So there is a lot of environmental issues, a lot of environmental concerns with beef. The main reason the Amazon is getting cut down as aggressively as it is to make room for cattle.
Right.
So there is a strong environmental angle to this. It's like we can satisfy some of that want for beef without having to take up more space with cows.
That rainforest one's new to me because I understood that the rainforest was being chopped down for farming, but I guess beef farming I didn't think of. Oh, well, that's
Sure.
interesting. But yeah, I don't think that's the reason you're a vegan though, because vegan can't eat like
Yeah.
anything. Can't even have a product that's produced from
Yeah.
a cow
No,
or.
no vegans here, right?
And the vegan place that just opened in Castleberry, which I was kind of excited about, and I did try it once with my granddaughter, is already closed. Like this
Wow.
lasted
That's
maybe 2 months.
Wow,
It's
Joel.
beautiful, and listen, it is a beautiful layout. What they did to create that,
But
if you got greasy burgers and you really just want to take this place over, it looks like a diner, like a real nice diner.
but there was no market for the vegan.
No, they had a very successful food truck, and that was
Mm,
great. But when they actually tried to put it into the restaurant,
no.
and it's in a bit. How many vegans live in Castleberry, or was it in the right place? How much research did they do? So no, it just didn't work. But yeah,
Any vegans out there, let us know. What are your thoughts on lab grown meat?
There
I
you go.
I'll tell you, the burger was good. It tasted good. I just didn't like the smell, and that was my problem with it. And um, but I don't know. You got to use an awful lot of different processes to get there. But it's all fruit and vegetables, I would assume. Hey, the ketchup's real, so you can put ketchup on anything, right?
Yeah. I've had some decent plant-based hot dogs, but they pretty much all need mustard. Is the catch there. Like you need a little mustard on pretty much all of them. Otherwise it almost feels incomplete. It's interesting.
I've had some vegan dishes and almost nearly was vegan when I was in Thailand. So, but I just haven't come around to eating like the vegan
Well,
burgers or hot dogs and things like that. I'll just eat vegetables.
here's one that didn't make it into our show, but if you're interested, I don't have the details of it. I read the whole article. There's a food competition every year,
Hmm.
and there was a blue cheese that was going to win overall best cheese. It was going to win, um, but it got thrown out on a technicality because the dairy industry went after it. But it was vegan, and it would have been the first vegan winner of the award, and it was a blue cheese.
And the contest was just for
No, it was for every like
variety,
it's all foods.
which
So it went up against the other cheeses,
right.
and there was an ingredient in the original recipe
Okay.
that it was turned in that ingredient was in it when it wasn't. So that's how they got it
Mm,
thrown out because
okay.
one of the ingredients was not legal or
Interesting.
FDA approved. But
Oh,
but
okay.
that ingredient had already been eliminated when they had submitted it. So
Okay.
it would have been very interesting because it would have been a vegan cheese that must not have been as dry, and it actually was winning. It was going to win the overall award.
Right.
So
But because
got
of
it got
that
it
illegal
got
substance.
it. They did everything possible to get it disqualified. I'll look the
Yeah.
article up, but yeah, it was a blue cheese that was
Interesting.
vegan, and it was going to win this top award. And they're not going to apply for it again because the person there's no that applied for it to get it in is no longer with the company. But they're like, no, we're not playing this. We're going to still make this fantastic blue cheese, and we're going to get it to the restaurants, the vegan restaurants. So
Right. Kellen, any closing thoughts?
when when mechanical textile weaving was new in England in like the 18 was it the 1880s or 1890s? I'm kind of forgetting exactly when. But when like the mechanical weaving of textiles was new, there were a couple cases where workers and family members, think friends, marched onto factories, invaded, and broke down the machines because they said that the machines were going to take away their way of life. That the machines were going to take away jobs. There was even a couple members of parliament who considered banning mechanical weaving.
Hmm.
It is important to, keep your own protected, but it's also important to recognize that progress can happen. And in this case, it's not even like this is going to replace the meat industry as a whole, anyways. And certainly not anytime soon. I think it's a little strange, given that there's only a couple producers of this in the US, that we here in Florida needed to take such dramatic action against it. Because I mean, maybe if you want to require labeling, like maybe just require labeling, to discourage consumers, because there is shown to be a stigma against lab grown meat.
Sure.
Maybe if you just required a labeling, it would have killed it off in a more natural way. That's just my personal view. I think if you want to take action, to protect the authentic beef industry, that would have been a more reasonable way to do it. But it's just going to be interesting now that the FDA is now slowly opening the floodgates to lab grown meat. How that's gonna end up affecting people's diets. Right?
Okay.
What's the market gonna be like? What are the effects? It's kind of exciting. I'm kind of interested.
Joel?
well, I'm not used to processed food. I think that's
Right.
our biggest problem in the United States is processed food. I'm glad that they're going to stop another process, but the only thing my last word is beef. It's what for dinner.
Bravo.
Speaking of which, I wonder if Oprah Winfrey have any comment on this particular conversation. But my closing words is that I wish that the Florida legislature and DeSantis focus on more legislation, passing bills and signing bills that really affect our kitchen table issues, so to speak. Besides, the type of beef that we eat, but I understand there are other industries and lobbies that need to have their needs addressed. And I've, again, I just want to get back to the things that really, really matter to voters, citizens, residents
Mhm.
here in Florida. Um, Kellen Clark, where can people see you on your social media?
What?
Where can people find you on social media?
There's not a lot of places to find me. I kind of mostly hang around at the J&W network on YouTube, LinkedIn, and whatnot. But you can add me on LinkedIn, message me on LinkedIn if you ever want to talk about issues. I love talking to people about random stuff. But what would really mean the most to me and to David and to Joel would be if you hit that like button, you subscribed, and you shared. We're trying to grow this community. We want to have conversations. We want to know your thoughts on lab grown meat as well as any piece of legislation that we ever cover. We want to know. And it
And I
all
can't
starts
believe
there.
I'm sorry, and I can't believe we had a conversation this entire time and nobody said, "Where's the beef?"
I wasn't
like
going to go there.
share, do your part to make this network reach audiences across. Have your comments about beef, what you think. Vegans, please have a comment because I do want to hear from you.
I do too.
I didn't mean to criticize. I just kind of was puzzled. And honestly, comments come in and we try to answer them. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a morning constitution where we're just going to answer a bunch of questions that or comments that came for one of our visitors, one of our guests. So we're always trying to get new ideas. So help us out there, audience.
Heck
Excellent,
yeah.
everyone.
You can't make this shit up.
And we are out.